Welcome to another episode of the Leverage Podcast. Today's episode is all about leadership. I'm excited to bring you in and discuss what this individual has brought to our realm, mentoring others, coaching others, and sharing his insights on leadership. Welcome to the show, Dwight Clarke. Thank you for being with me today.
John, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, tell us all about Authentically DC and your career path into leadership.
Absolutely. Authentically DC is my passion project. It is my revolution on the topic of fake it till you make it. In this age of AI, John, it's one of my pet peeves. And it's always been one of my pet peeves to hear that term, fake it till you make it. So in this age of AI, I think leadership is being redefined at the speed of time. And that is what I am very much passionate about. I am extremely passionate about the fact that we need to make sure that we program humanity into the artificial intelligence that we're going to be using going forward. And I'm advocating that we have strong leaders to do that programming. And I'm also advocating that we have people with character do the programming. And so
absolutely,
where this leadership, and that's what Authentically DC is all about.
I can agree with that 100%. And also, as you know, our world becomes more digital. I think COVID was an example of this when we're all on Zooms. In-person interaction is less and less frequent. That human piece of everything becomes that much more obviously important. And so I remember during COVID, seeing people for the first time after a year or two, depending on where they were in the country. And it was just so obvious that that in-person human physical connection could not be replaced. And it seems that with AI, yes, there are a lot of benefits using this incredible tool, research, learning, creating documents super duper fast, but we need great humans to be guiding and running and using these tools. And it sounds like that is a big focus of what you're all about.
That is absolutely correct. I mean, there are some in the HR field that believe that AI is going to, in fact, create more HR jobs. I think it's going to create a different type of HR professional, in my opinion. Whether it requires more of them, I think remains to be seen. But clearly, without character, we've seen the movies. John, we know how it ends. If we don't have proper characters programming the intelligence, we need real intelligence to program the artificial one. So I think the verdict's out on what that looks like. It's rapidly changing the way that we live and work.
Well, I think one case study that a lot of people are aware of is, there's been a few times over the years that a major company would train AI on Twitter or have it review Twitter, and all of a sudden there are these terrible, terrible posts coming from this machine. And so that's just an example of what's going in is going to come out in some form or fashion.
That's right.
Well, with your career, nobody starts as a leader, right? Leaders are developed, leaders are grown. I'm sure there are some inherent abilities that people are born with that contribute to leadership. But take me through your career. Help me understand, where did you start and how did you get to where you are today?
Wow, that's a really great question. So, John, I started my career as an international tax accountant many, many moons ago. I did a little sales and marketing after doing one HR project and realizing that marketing people made a lot of money. And then after doing a little bit of sales and marketing, and I realized that there was one thing in sales that I couldn't do. I couldn't sell you something that I didn't believe that you, if I didn't believe you needed it, I couldn't sell it to you. And
I have that same fatal flaw as well, Dwight. Yeah.
I think we're going to call that character, for the lack of a better term. I just couldn't do it. And so many years ago, I pivoted to HR, where I've held positions of increasing responsibility across many, many different industries, including financial services, retail. I've done industries like utilities. So I've had my fair share of cross-industry experience, but it's primarily financial services. And people are people are people. And I think that is why it's really very important that we responsibly use AI. And yes, leadership for me was born out of a series of what people might consider failures, but I consider them learnings. Because with every sort of corporate failure, what happens is that you, at least I did, you look inward and you go, well, what role did I play in this dynamic?
Yes.
And if you do that often enough, John, you evolve to what I call a level of self-mastery that allows you to very authentically coach others. And so that is where my natural curiosity for mankind comes into play. And that is where my experiences across many industries come into play in my coaching work as well.
I love that. I'd love to dig in a little deeper on that self-awareness, self-evaluation piece. You know, everybody has situations through life that are challenging. And the one thing that we can affect, the one thing that we can change is our own response or our own behavior, right?
Absolutely.
And so if you could look at what can I learn from that will help dictate the future, it would make sense that the most effective thing would be learning about yourself, right? And I think there are all sorts of situations. There's times where you feel wronged. There's times where you have wronged others. And there are people who are victims of other people's behavior. However, if you see yourself just purely as a victim, you never grow from that because you don't
Absolutely.
identify what can I do different next time, even if it's not obvious. Share a little bit more about how we can effectively self-evaluate and grow as a result.
Self-evaluation requires vulnerability first and foremost. And every time I have had situations in my life where things didn't go as planned and things didn't go according to the script that I had in my mind, it required me to go inside and say, okay, well, Dwight, what role did you play in this dynamic? And ultimately, if you're very honest and authentic with yourself, you will attain a level of self-mastery because you will understand what your biases are, what your tendencies are. So I know good, bad, and ugly, all parts of Dwight. And I understand and I'm able to empathize with all different types or all different ranges of humanity because guess what? In every person, there is an angel and there's a not so angel, right? And,
Sure.
and we sort of like vacillate between the two. And so I think, that empathy along with experience has given me wisdom. I'm a capitalist first and foremost. And so I really do understand business and the levers that are required for organizational success. But I also understand how important it is to have solid leadership within those organizations and just how easy it is for organizations to drive human behavior and vice versa.
Yep. Well, it sounds like you've probably throughout your career had some great bosses, some great leaders, and some bad ones.
Yes.
Help me understand a couple things for each. What makes a great leader and what makes a bad boss?
Oh, John, that's a really great question. I think a great leader for me was always that individual that was able to get what we would call discretionary effort out of me. When I thought that, I could only give you 10 hours of task, for example. If I had a great boss, somebody that I really respected, I would push myself to 14, 15, 16, just because I wanted to please that boss. And because their mission and my mission, I felt like it was our mission and I felt a part of something bigger than myself. And I contrast that to a bad leader who is somebody that feels like they need to compete with you. Somebody that is that is not coming from a place of integrity, for example. Because at the end of the day, we are there to do whatever your boss instructs you to do. But there's a way to do that that is authentic to people, and then there is an inauthentic way to do that.
Right.
And authentic leaders get that discretionary effort. Inauthentic leaders don't. And I'll just, that's as contrasting as it gets, right?
Right. Well, when you're explaining that, the image that comes to my head is that typical leadership, servant leadership image I think we've all seen, where you've got the guy in the chariot with all the people pulling it in front of him, and then you've got the guy who's out of the chariot and he's in front of his troops, and they're all pulling it together,
That's
right?
right. That's
I have
right.
a friend, Jeff Moore. He's a icon of Dallas sports and a good friend of mine. And every single person I have met who has worked for him just loves this guy, And one story that I remember coming up multiple times, I think they did a big event, X Games event in Austin, I'm pretty sure. And so after hours, he came down after doing all his meetings and all his things, and he could have gone home, right? But he got down there on the field with all the interns and the the base level of the new hires. It was just stuffing envelopes. There were like a gazillion papers that had to go in envelopes. And so the leader came down and just right alongside people did, the same job that they were doing. And every single person I've known who has worked for this gentleman has done exactly what you have said, wanted to work harder to accomplish the mission that he was tasked with and was leading the team to accomplish. It sounds like what you're saying is a great leader isn't above their team and is, at the very least, provides the feeling that they are in the trenches with the team. Is that accurate, or would you add to that in any way?
It's absolutely accurate. I think one of the best examples of leaders that I've met over the course of my career, and I've had the privilege of working with some really great leaders. There was one individual that became the chief technology officer, and he was very clear about his lack of knowledge. I wouldn't say disdain, but he was very clear that he didn't know how to open his computer. But what he was a trusted advisor. He was somebody that was able to rally people around the common cause. He was able to hire people that were experts in their area of expertise. And he did not allow his lack of expertise to threaten his position of leadership in the slightest.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I think that is a great example of what an authentic leader is, because he was like, okay, I see the situation. I know what I don't know what I don't know in this situation. So let me get people who can fill me in, but the rest of it, let me do. My job here is to make sure that everybody works together in the same direction and that the rest of the organization understands what we are doing, is supportive of what we're doing, and most importantly, is funding of what we're doing. And that is, oh my Lord, that was one of the greatest examples of leadership that I can recall.
I love that. That sounds like that involves what we already spoke about, which is self-awareness, right? What are my strengths and weaknesses?
Yes.
You can't hire for your weaknesses if you're not aware of them, right? But it also sounds like that's a unique mix of humility and confidence.
Yes.
Right? The humility to say, I don't know it all, and I need other people to shore up my weaknesses or broaden the expertise, but also the confidence to be able to say, and that's okay.
Yes.
And I think regardless of level, there's this imposter syndrome that a lot of people deal with, and it's reported that oftentimes the higher you are in an organization, the greater the imposter syndrome is, because so much more is on your shoulders.
Yes.
Speak a little bit more about your experience with that humility and that confidence.
Well, first of all, confidence and confidence and humility don't necessarily look different, right?
When I first think about it, sometimes you think of those being opposite, right? Because confidence can be confused for arrogance,
exactly,
or pride,
exactly,
and pride and humility would be opposites.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. I guess humility comes first.
Yes, yes. And I am humble enough to know that I don't know. I'm not the expert in one particular area, and I am humble and curious enough to make that statement, right? But I'm confident enough to know that, you know what, John? There is not a situation that you're dealing with that I haven't dealt with or somebody that I know of has dealt with. And I'm confident enough to tell you or to help you arrive at conclusions. This is how you get yourself out of the situation. John, this is what's in your control. This is what's not in your control. And this is how we should proceed. And, just help you down that pathway. So I think it's a really important distinction to make. And as it pertains to corporate America, yeah, that's why that anxiety level is so high, because that fake it till you make it persona, the higher up you get, if you don't develop the foundational self-confidence, self-awareness, and leadership skills, that's why prescription drugs are the prices that they are, man, because people, they need that to mask all that anxiety, all that fear. And what I'm saying to you is it doesn't have to be that. I'm suggesting that you don't have to. Listen, I'm not the smartest person in my family, all right? I am the most experienced person, probably the most resilient person in my family currently. But I know a lot about a lot of different things. And you have to be humble enough to be able to admit that, but also passionate and driven enough to drive people in the direction of the corporation's agenda.
I appreciate you sharing that. Well, next, I want to get into some of the leverage that you have experienced that's enabled you in your career. But first, let's take a listen from our sponsor.
Business owners and entrepreneurs will place a proven executive assistant VA for just $4 to $8 an hour. And if they don't perform, you don't pay. Imagine freeing up 20 plus hours a week by someone handling your most time-consuming tasks like admin work, managing emails, scheduling meetings, and so much more. This one hire could transform your productivity and give you back the time you need to focus on growing your business. At Sphere Rocket VA, we make this possible in as little as 7 days. We'll place a proven executive assistant VA in your business for just $4 to $8 an hour, and your VA will take over day-to-day administrative tasks, help manage your email and calendar, follow up with past clients, giving you back 20 plus hours a week so you can increase your sales and even enjoy more personal time. And here's the best part. If they don't give you back 20 plus hours a week in the first month, you don't pay Sphere Rocket a dime. We've done this for thousands of business owners, and now it's your turn to see the results. Click the link around this video to schedule a demo and discover how this one hire can completely change how you run your business. Remember, if within 45 days the VA doesn't perform, you don't pay.
All right, welcome back. We are here with leader Dwight Clarke. So Dwight, please share with me, in addition to these incredible insights you've had on what makes a great leader and how to lead a team, help me understand what are some leverage points that you've discovered in your own career that have really helped to catapult your business.
Absolutely. Well, I think the importance of strategic partnerships is really key in business, right? I mean, no one person gets anything done in a vacuum. So the ability to work across functions, across business leaders, across agendas to lead from where you are is essentially one of the biggest components that I try to help my clients. So I think it's really important that you have the right set of people around you as you are growing. As an entrepreneur, I've made some really great strategic partnerships as well. And, they continue to help me grow and develop my business. And, Sphere Rocket is one of those partnerships that I consider near and dear. I'm not a paid spokesperson by any means, but and I don't guarantee the results that I might have gotten because I've gotten an excellent one. Listen, there are strategic partnerships that one must engage in, whether in business or working on one's own business. I have now a network of other entrepreneurs upon which I can call at any time to handle a myriad of things that are not necessarily in my wheelhouse. You just have to know where your strengths are and what your strengths are not. And that's what I do.
That's very well put. I've been a solopreneur myself in the past, and one of the, I would say, mistakes that I made if I were to go back and do everything again is trying to do everything myself. And that can come from a lot of different places, whether it's misunderstanding how to delegate, thinking that you should be able to do everything, or sometimes being concerned about adding a cost in your business to then, add an employee, add an assistant or something like that. Share a little bit about how folks can overcome those things. Personally, if you're that solopreneur, you're trying to do everything yourself, and kind of opening up that mindset to collaborate with others a bit more.
Well, I think what you have to do is that tried and true time value for money equation, right? It's, how much is your individual time worth? And, once you start to break down where your value is, and there are those tasks upon which are not necessarily the best use of your time, that is true in business, right? The leader that you spoke of that went down to stuffing envelopes was probably paid a ridiculous hourly rate, but at the end of the day, he was willing to do whatever it took to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not a sustainable business model. You lose money if that guy continues to stuff envelopes for 40 hours a week.
That's right.
So I think making the investment is it's a smart business decision. Period.
I've heard it said one time, a great way to evaluate is your time being best spent doing XYZ tasks is you look at your income, or let's say your desired income, right? And then you find the hourly rate within that. So essentially, for those who are not aware, roughly if you multiply an hourly rate times 2,000, that's your salary. So if you wanted to make $100,000 a year, that's $50 an hour, essentially. And so as that solopreneur, as that entrepreneur, the way to figure this out is just take your hourly rate of your revenue or your desired income and apply that to whatever task you're doing. And so you are actually paying that amount, happens to be to yourself, but you are paying that amount for that task to be done. And so just think about managing my inbox. Would want somebody make $100,000 managing an inbox? How about maybe outreach to procure qualified leads for sales calls? How about social media, right? And so it's really interesting when you put things in that frame of mind. Wait a minute. I wouldn't pay $50 an hour for this. In fact, I'm going to save $30 an hour, or, with a VA, I'm going to save 40 plus an hour getting this done.
That's the way to look at it, John. That is absolutely the right way to look at it. It is what is your time worth? And and if I'm going to be complete, so again, you got to know what you're strong at. I have a beautiful mind, and sometimes, something like simple like scheduling a calendar invite, that's not my wheelhouse. You know what I mean? As absurd as that sounds, those aren't the things that interest me, nor do I like to spend my time doing. But again, the accountant in me comes out and says, this makes absolutely good business sense, and the investment does pay off.
The other thing that I've identified in the past is, did I make money today? Right? Like, what do you do that makes money? Because being busy is not the same as being productive.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your job is to sell something or something that is directly tied to revenue, a great question for some solopreneurs is, are you staying busy doing tasks that are making you money? Or are you staying busy doing tasks that you're comfortable doing because no one's telling you no when you're doing a social media post,
That's
managing
right.
the inbox, XYZ?
That's right. That's right. No, I am focusing on those tasks that are revenue generators. And as someone that's doing a little bit of writing as well, you also need the time and space to be creative. And so
That's
I think, offloading a lot of responsibilities that most solopreneurs, we all have to do bookkeeping. We all need to do phone answering. We all need to schedule meetings. We all need to perform those tasks. But having someone to do them for you at a much more efficient clip in a cheaper hourly rate than it would be if it were your own time, that's a no-brainer for me.
Right. And the key is it's just that first step is what I found out. So many things in life are that first step. And what you're going to discover is if you free yourself for more revenue generating activities, guess what? You're going to have more revenue and you're going to be able to offload those other things. Well, I have a couple more questions for you, as I just love digging into your expertise and your insights and all your experience here. One,
yes, sir,
has to do with failures rather than success. And I feel like on shows like this, a lot of times we're talking about the things that we've done great, our accomplishments, the trophies in the room, right? But one of the greatest teachers in life are failures. Take me back to a mistake that you have made in the past that maybe was the greatest lesson that you learned in your career.
That's such a great question, John, because I truly talk about the importance of learning from failure. And for me, I have, quote unquote, failed so many times in life. But after every failure, what I did, John, is that I looked internally and I said, well, Dwight, what was your role in this situation? And every time I failed, I went inward. And I think through the process of going inward, if you go inward and deep enough, long enough, and you really sincerely want to understand, all right, what could I have done differently? You do that enough times, you master yourself. And it's when you master yourself that you are able to even begin to think about coaching other people. And because you completely understand who you are, what your strengths, what your areas of opportunity, what your biases are. To coach people, you have to understand you just have to be very grounded. And so I've attained a level of self-mastery through failure. And I'm putting air quotes in that because in my last article that's on my website, authenticallydc.com, I talked about one of my early failures in corporate America. Now, just picture this, John. I started my career as an international tax accountant.
Yep.
And so just imagine spending almost a decade of your life questioning people about expenses because the government says every dollar spent has to be ordinary and necessary, right?
Yep. Right.
So now you pivoted over into a role in HR, and this is like one of the first meetings that you go to. And they were talking about bringing in a breathing expert. And I really honestly thought it was a joke. And chuckled. Except, John, I was the only one who chuckled.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh is right. That was a failure, right? Because that didn't end well for me. Took a little while, but that failure taught me a lesson, right? And every subsequent failure teaches you something. And so, and if the Bible is to be believed, you get wisdom from every time that you fall. And so attain the level of wisdom, self-mastery, and experience from which I can coach people across any industry and across any level of an organization because of the factors that I just spoke of.
That's fantastic. In fact, not to get too religious in the episode, but I'm a Christian myself, and I read my devotional every morning. And so this morning's devotional had to do with, you experience something, and God helps you through this. And then through that experience, you in turn are able to help others
Yes.
who are going through the same thing because you have been through that, been helped, and then you can share that as well. It sounds like in your coaching business, that's a lot of what you're doing.
I don't shy away from people's faiths, and I think and thank you for sharing your faith with me, John, because we share the same faith. I think there's a level of vulnerability that one needs to be willing to go to become a great leader. And if faith is a bedrock of who you are, I think it's really important for us to tap into that when we do coaching. So I do not shy away from that topic. And, faith is, you probably, it's funny. I've often said that I have read and forgotten more leadership books than most people have read. And I'm reading the Bible last. But so far, what I've learned about the Bible is that a lot of the leadership theories that I've read and forgotten about, they're actually pretty biblical in their origins. So
right.
I'm pretty ironic.
That's pretty cool. Well, another question for you, semi-related to that last one, but I'm just thinking through people who are watching and listening who are not yet at that experienced leadership stage, but are maybe early career, mid-career, and moving forward. The question is, based on your experience, if you were to talk to your former self on day one of starting your career, looking over the decades to come, what would you tell your former self? What advice would you give yourself that you think would benefit you through those years in your accounting career?
John, oof, that's a deep question. I think I just alluded to it earlier. I'm reading. I'm really excited. I will just share with you that my wife and I are going to be attending a Bible college starting in September. So I really meant it when I said reading the leadership books in reverse. I would have rather have read the Bible first and then all the subsequent leadership books as opposed to being it vice versa.
Sure.
So that would be something that I would tell my younger self. And then my younger self, I would just basically say, you know what? The weapons are going to form, but they will not prosper. And I would just tell yourself to, give yourself grace along the journey because, you've been given grace. As a matter of fact, you receive grace daily. At least that's what I just recently learned. And it's going to be okay. And the scars and the hurt and the pain, if you learn and repurpose that and turn all of that negative into positive, oh my Lord, the things that you can do, the things that you realize that you've been brought through, it's a completely different perspective on life and living.
Absolutely. It dawned on me one time that if you learn from an experience, no matter how painful, no matter how difficult, it was not wasted.
That's right. You don't lose, you learn, my friend. And I've never, I don't, some people when they read my stuff, they go, well, you sound like, people think that I don't have a problem losing in life because Lord knows we've competed as former athletes.
Sure.
You can always admit when somebody is better than you are. I don't like to feel cheated. But I think more importantly, after every loss, there's a lesson. And you just have to be open and authentic enough to embrace the lesson. And I think whether I knew that I was doing it subconsciously or not, I've had enough of those lessons that has now forged this version of me that a younger Dwight would go, "You? Yeah, I'm still you."
Yeah.
But this is just 50,000 scars later, but we're still the same guy.
Right. Well, to use that sports example as well, it's so rare that a team or an athlete learns in victory. I'm a big NFL fan, go Niners. And who's your team, by the way?
I'm a New York guy, so I can go Jets or Giants, but I do have a soft spot for the long-suffering Jets.
Oof. That's a tough one. There's a lot to learn. They've learned a lot.
Talk about learning from failure. These guys aren't embracing the lessons.
That's right. There's a lot of losing. There's not a lot of learning. Great example. But, I remember watching a press conference, I think it was last season, and whoever the team was, the coach, they barely squeaked out a win. And the coach said, we'll always take the opportunity to learn while still getting a win, And it's why you see so few undefeated teams, or that famous Patriots team. Your Giants, got close that last game of that season, and I think what it showed to them, they said this team's beatable. And in that Super Bowl, they made the Patriots 18-1, right? But I think that just going back to that sports example, for those listening, if you feel like you've had a loss, if you feel like you've had a failure, you can switch that in your mind and instead say, no, I have a learning opportunity. And now I have an opportunity to make sure I don't repeat this thing. That maybe it was my fault, maybe it wasn't, right? But what led to this? How did this happen, and what was my part? And then you can grow.
And John, it is never, listen, it is never not your fault, right? So it's never not my fault, right? But there are other factors in this dynamic that I have to examine. So I learn about myself. I learn about people. I learn about business. I learn about corporate culture. I learn about everything that I need to learn. And I learn about soul. And then I learned about spirit, because when you fail in the world, that you want to get down on your hands and knees. And when I did that, I was like, wait a second, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Huh? I'm still breathing. It's like that scene from Eddie Murphy in Trading Places.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's that scene.
Well, that's great. Last question for you, Dwight, is simply, how can those listening and watching get a hold of you in the ways that you would like them to?
Oh, wow. John, thank you so much for that. The best way to get a hold of me is through my website, www.authenticallydc.com. I do have a social media presence on both LinkedIn and Facebook. I also do have an Instagram account. So please, I'm on all of those mediums. But again, www.authenticallydc.com. I provide one-on-one coaching. I do cohort coaching. And I'm most excited to announce, John, that my Jamaican Mastermind retreat was just nationally advertised in the last week. So
incredible. Congratulations.
And you'll hear more about that stuff.
Fantastic. Can't wait to hear more. Well, thank you so much, Dwight. We learned a lot today about leadership, your insights from the incredible career you've had. Thank you, Dwight Clarke, for joining us on the Leverage Podcast.
John, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.